March 27th, 2004, I locked the door on my 4-bedroom colonial in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, got behind the wheel of a U-Haul truck, waved goodbye to my neighbors of 20 years, and headed south. Destination, New York City. My college-age kids met me on 49th Street and moved me up to my 1-bedroom walk-up in Hell's Kitchen. And at midnight that night, my son said to me, "Mom, how do we get here?" And I said, "The universe, my son, the universe." Hi, my name is Karen Fitzgerald, and I'm a life coach and a motivational speaker and an entertainer. And all of these are to help people live a happier, more joy-filled life. But before I go on, I want to ask you a question. I'd like to have a show of hands here. How many of you have had an event in your life that changed everything? Raise your hands. Ooh, look at this. Large group, almost everybody. Thank you. Me too. Mine was my divorce. After my kids went to college, I found out that my husband had been living a secret life. In all of his workaholic traveling, he was not only addicted to work, but he was addicted to pornography, and he had a dominatrix in another state. After 25 years of a lonely, rejecting marriage, I finally filed for divorce. I was terrified, but I surrendered to a power greater than myself, and I did it. Friends of mine thought I would be dancing in the street, but instead, I entered on a soul journey that lasted many, many months. It was full of prayer and contemplation and journaling, and then I went for therapy, because I had to look at my family history to see how I had landed here. And one of the things I found was people who had been living lives they did not want to be living. My dad had wanted to be a doctor. He wanted to be a healer, but there was no money, and after World War II, he became a car salesman. And when he lost his used car business, he became an acute alcoholic. I was 14 years old, but even then I thought, there must be a solution. So I went for help. To the newspaper, Ann Landers, she would know, and she did. She ran an article from the National Council on Alcoholism. I read it, I wrote for the information, I ran to my mom and I said, "Mom, I've got it, good news. Dad isn't having a nervous breakdown, he's just a lush." And in my 14-year-old head, I thought, I can fix this. It became my mission. And 5 years later, I got my dad to rehab. And all these years later, he's still sober. So I thought, I can save anybody. Next, I married him. And you know how that turned out. My addiction was trying to fix it. I couldn't fix anybody. People have to want to change. He didn't. 7 years earlier, I had gotten a lesson from my older brother, Craig. He had risen to the top of the corporate ladder and became a senior partner with a big 8 firm in Manhattan. He made boatloads of money, but he didn't like the work. What he loved was to rebuild houses, rebuild cars, work with his hands. But he didn't give himself permission to do that. And at age 46, he died by suicide. And then there was my mom, Lillian. She always wanted to be a psychotherapist, but she had been raised in an orphanage and didn't have the confidence to go back to school. So she didn't. But if she had, she was brilliant. Instead of Dr. Phil, you might have had Dr. Lil. Have you ever heard of the phrase, follow your bliss? That made some sense to me, but when I went to college, I was told to be a teacher or a nurse. It was practical. But what I really wanted to be was an actress, a singer, a performer. But I was discouraged. So show of hands again, how many of you were discouraged from following your dreams? Yeah. We still have a large number out there. Well, the word that I got about it was performers make no money, they're kind of immoral, and you might turn into cheap trash. Now, personally, I thought that cheap trash sounded kind of intriguing, but probably not a great place for a good Catholic girl to head. So instead, I got married. And we moved from state to state in those early years, following his career, and I had 2 small babies, and I was alone, and I was isolated, and those dreams came back to save me. Because if they're real, they still come knocking at your door. This came, again, in the newspaper. It was an ad for an audition for the musical Godspell. In fear and trembling, I went, I got cast in a lead role, and my theater career in Portsmouth took off until it halted 17 years later as I was on this spiritual journey. And at that point, my therapist, Irene, kept saying to me, "What do you want? You spent your life taking care of other people, but what are your big dreams?" So I settled more into the quiet. And as I surrendered into the gratitude and trust, my intuition started kicking in. First, it became about writing and then speaking. So I took a baby step, and I mentioned that to a few people. Some months later, I was invited to be a keynote speaker at a conference, and then another conference followed, and then another conference after that. So I kept listening. And then the message was, "You're going to be moving someplace bigger. New York City." Who knew? The apartment dropped in my lap. I never looked. God is in real estate. Then my therapist said to me, "More healing." She and my friend Carrie had gotten me to the 12 steps. But then they sent me to the Karen Foundation. And no, it is not named after me. But the Karen Foundation is a wonderful organization that treats addicts and their families. I went to the family program, and now I'm on their New York advisory board, and they are one of the co-sponsors of this wonderful event. And finally, after all this time in my monk place, it became about fun. And the guidance I got was dancing. First it was belly dancing, and then salsa dancing, and then pole dancing. And I wound up in a sexy women empowerment group, but even there, they started to say, get in touch with your desires. What are they? Dream them, voice them, live them, be them. And I knew what it was. It was to inspire people to get out and make better choices, to have more freedom, to live life, to enjoy it. And so it started to come out in everything that I did. I wrote and performed a solo show comedy about my trip to India. Eat, Pray, Love, it wasn't. Then I wrote a cabaret show called The Goddess Review. All of that, both of those sold out. I wrote a TV pilot script. And this year, I did a popular webinar for Hay House, the spiritual media company. But with all of those, even though the content was different, the message was the same. Follow your dreams. Follow your bliss. Learn to find the joy of life. And so when I work with my coaching clients, I'll give you some tips. One of the ways to begin this, because we've been shut down from our intuition, one of the ways to begin this is to start to get quiet. Meditation, contemplation, and then take a notebook and start writing your desires. They can be big ones, little ones, fun ones, important ones. And then step out of your comfort zone and take a baby step. Just a baby step to try it. And then another one. Because it requires a desire to change. And it may be about a job, and it may not be about a job. You may want to create a garden to create beauty in your life. Or, like my dad, he went to AA to get sober. But then he started doing service. And he has helped hundreds and hundreds of people get sober, and he loves it. He's found his bliss, and he's a healer. Who knew? Because the whole point of all of this is to find out what lights you up, and then take that light out and shine it onto the world, because the world needs it so badly. So now, I want to invite you to get out of your comfort zone. Stand up. Everybody stand up. I'm a singer, as I said, and I'm going to invite all of you to shine your light onto the world and sing with me. And it's a song you learned in school or in camp or in church or something else. And I'll start it, and I want you to jump in. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, this little light of mine, louder, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.